What up, Coordination? Holy guacamole. We have Pia Mancini on GreenPilled today. Pia is an OG in the Web3 digital democracy space. One of my inspirations for starting Gitcoin. She started Open Collective, which is focused on open source sustainability, has had tens of millions of dollars worth of impact on open source sustainability. Pia is an expert in digital communities, decentralized philanthropy, mutual aid, and co-ops, a lot of things that we're calling DAOs. Before they were DAOs, Pia has had experience with. We talk about the cultural problems with DAOs in this episode, unlearning before we learn, learning to govern, the exit to community that Pia and Open Collective is going through to preserve their mission in a decentralized way. And we talk about Pia's deep belief that we are 21st century citizens doing our best to interact with 19th century institutions, with information technology from the 15th century. And Pia is convinced that it's up to us to design the political and economic systems for the internet generation. So we get really deep on that. Coordination, Pia is an OG. Pia is an inspiration to me. I think Pia is going to be an inspiration to you. And without further ado, I give you Pia Mancini from Open Collective.
When you shop for plane tickets, you probably use Kayak, Expedia, or Google to compare ticket prices. So why would you limit yourself to just one exchange when you trade crypto? When you make your trades, you want to make sure you're getting the best possible price on your trade, and that's why you should be using MATCHA. MATCHA has smart order routing that splits your trade across all the various liquidity sources in Ethereum, and is also operational on Polygon, Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, and other chains. Trading on MATCHA is super easy because it pools the liquidity for me in a single, easy-to-use platform and allows me to make limit on-chain orders, so you can set and forget your DeFi trades, and they will go through automatically while you're away. So when you're making a trade, head over to matcha.xyz/Bankless and connect your wallet to start getting the best prices and most liquidity when you trade your crypto assets. OPOLIS is a member-owned digital employment cooperative offering payroll, health insurance, and membership perks that go beyond the basics that you would find at your normal 9-to-5. OPOLIS offers not only health benefits, but also pay stubs and W-2s, workers' comp, and unemployment insurance, as well as disability benefits for independent DAO workers that are traditionally reserved for regular employment situations. OPOLIS provides a tax-compliant way to get your paycheck in crypto and professionalize your work-life situation. OPOLIS members enjoy an average of 20 to 50% savings on top-rated national group health insurances, as well as self-sovereign portable employment. You can also get tokenized rewards based on consumption, staking, and referrals, and also the ability to fund payroll in fiat and stablecoins without the use of centralized exchange. You can also receive paychecks in fiat and whitelisted digital currencies. So sign up for OPOLIS today and get 1,000 work and 1,000 bank tokens when you become a member of OPOLIS by May 25th, 2022, and get started working your self-sovereign life.
Hey, Pia, how's it going?
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Great to be reconnected. Could you give us a quick overview of Open Collective and your work there?
Yeah, sure. So Open Collective it's a constellation, right? And we're on a mission to make sure that communities are sustainable. And so the way we do it is the following. Our financial and economic system is used to having corporations and moving money between corporations, which forces you to be somewhere in the world. It forces you to have a sort of hierarchical structure. Even if it's nonprofit, you still need a president or an owner, someone to sign for bank accounts. Like you all folks in the Web3 space know that level of concentration of power is not what communities want or need. And so 6 years ago, we set out on a mission to make sure that communities could forget about all of that and fundraise and spend money in full transparency without needing to become a legal entity or have their own bank account. And this is how we do it. We set up a platform that is Open Collective Inc. And that platform is open source, is developed and maintained by Open Collective Inc., our company. And it's essentially a place where you can have a collective, you can fundraise, you can have events, you can have campaigns, you can connect with your community, and you can spend money. You can pay people for, invoices or reimbursing for expenses that they incurred while working for their communities. Now, this Open Finances Transparent platform is paired with a network of legal entities around the world. We have, right now on the platform about 400 entities around the world that what they do is they're custodials of the funds, right? Because the money still needs to go somewhere, right? And that somewhere is this network of legal entities that kind of abstract out all the complexity of reporting, taking care of taxes, taking care of local regulation. So the communities operate at one level of the stack, and everything else is abstracted out by this kind of network of legal entities. And so we created many of them. We have a charity in the US. We have the Open Source Collective that is dedicated to supporting the open source ecosystem. We have several entities like that, but the platform is also open and free for anyone that wants to use it to kind of support their own community. So that's Open
Amazing.
Collective.
Yeah, and I just want to say that you're an inspiration for me when I started Gitcoin. The work that Open Collective has done has been really, I think, influential in the open source sustainability movement. What are some of your favorite projects on the platform?
That's almost like asking who's your favorite child, Kevin. You don't do that.
Right.
So look, we started really strong in the open source world, right? Because the open source ecosystem was so ripe for Open Collective when we started in 2016. All the coordination was already happening. So the coordination problem was solved by GitHub mostly, and GitLab and Bitbucket. But it was already solved. There was someone already that enabled all of this coordination, creativity, collaboration to happen. And the results of open source when we started, the whole cultural argument about yes or no to open source, was already done in 2016. There was no question that we should be using open source. The question was how on earth are we going to fund this? Because we have all of these companies using all of this technology for free that is maintained by all of these folks who are not making a living out of it. And this system needs to be better, to improve. And so that's where we started, and that's still definitely kind of where my heart is in terms of the overall solution that we provide. We've been working in sustain, open source, this festival for many years, and kind of really pushing forward the open source sustainability digital infrastructure conversation. So I'm not so involved in that anymore because that's really running on its own. It has, I don't know, I think last year, we moved $12 million to open source projects. And so just last year alone, and this year it's May and we're already there. And so we've been, it's been, they don't need me anymore, which is great. I'm happy that that is happening. I work to make myself redundant. That is an important part of what I do. And so now I'm focusing more on the charitable space and thinking about decentralized philanthropy, kind of the mutual aid groups, or the solidarity economy in general, co-ops. So I've been the past couple of years, I've been really getting myself into that space. And I've been building networks there. So that is what now is kind of for me in my daily work.
Right. Well, I love that answer. As you know, Gitcoin sort of started out with a mission of growing and sustaining open source. You and I met through the Sustain community and through Eric Berry and Code Fund. And that cause is just such a close one to my heart. And y'all have supported some of the most prominent Web2 open source projects. So I just think that you're an inspiration. And so I see this kind of parity between the work that you're doing and what we're doing in the Web3 space. When you say things like digital communities, decentralized philanthropy, mutual aid, and co-ops, well, in the Web3 space, we just call that DAOs, which is maybe an overloaded term. I'm curious for you, having worked on this for half a decade, what do you think of DAOs? Having kind of worked on maybe a more Web2 analog to DAOs over the last several years.
So you're set to get me in trouble. I see. This is your mission today, right? No. And so DAOs. So I think that DAOs is solving a problem that we are still unable to solve, right? Which is automatically totally distributed sharing and transfer of value, right?
Right.
Open Collective and the solution that we provide is still anchored in the legacy system in quite some, in quite a way, because you have, your nonprofits that at the end of the day, sure, they virtualize themselves and we have hundreds of them and what have you, but they are like a layer infrastructure that is there and it connects to the legacy system a lot, that you report to the whatever IRS or you still are highly regulated and all of that jazz. What we want to do is kind of abstract that out for groups. But DAOs are doing that in a much more fluid and efficient way, because it just escapes the problem altogether, right? You're building something else somewhere else and there's like no connection, right? No middleman, no connection. Like you don't need to operate the DOS operating system. You're like somewhere else. And for me, that the way I see it, that is where we're going. I don't think we can all get there, right? So that's the first kind of, maybe insight. I think that we still need to figure out, like when you think of changing systems, of systemic change, right? You have like one way that is like, okay, let's overthrow the existing system and build a new one, right? On the ashes of what we brought down, like revolution. I'm like, sure, you can, try and do that. But once you open the gates of hell, no one knows what's going to come out, right? So the other option is like what Open Collective is kind of semi-doing. That is like, we're going to hack this freaking system and we're going to kind of operate in a way that we look like something that they are used to seeing, but we're actually doing all of this, enabling all of this amazingness on the side, right? And then there is a third way that it's where I want to go to, which is where DAOs are, which is like, okay, fuck all of this. We're going to build an alternative system and, escape this system, right? Like jump over it, like leapfrog that, which is what DAOs is doing. And that for me has an amazing appeal, right? Because it's like, it has this, it articulates an alternative in a way that is very clear, right? You have your own currency, you have your own regulations, you have your own governance, you have your own voting system. Like you have your thing, it looks like an alternative, like it smells like an alternative, it's clear, it separates. And I love that. And that excites me a lot. But what we're missing is like bridges between the worlds, right? What we're missing is like a path where we can start moving people over from this system to the other one. Because if not, like the new system is going to be like a niche system, right? And you're not going to accomplish like our goal of really building an alternative. Because unless you have people using that alternative, then it's not really a new system, right? And so I think that we still have a lot of work to do that. And that looks like, better onboarding and usability and like lowering, the cognitive leap that you need to make in order to use it and everything that we already know. But it also has to, at some point, connect somehow with what it exists. So I've been talking to many DAOs about this because many DAOs are like, or for example, developers that work for DAOs, they're asking me like, okay, I still need a pay stub for my landlord. I still need to be able to produce an invoice someone. How on earth do I show income if everything is like, in this, I don't know, in Kraken, right? Like, how do you prove to your landlord that you can pay your rent, if you have all your money in Kraken? Like, it's very difficult, but they're very concrete needs, right? So, I think that Open Collective needs to move more towards the future. But DAOs also need to start thinking about what links they need to the existing system and how we build them in a way that we're not, centralizing, but at the same time, we can actually use it, right? That's where I see all of this.
Amazing. What a beautiful answer. And I think that you have so much alpha, having run Open Collective for all these years in helping these open source communities operate in a non-hierarchical way, operate in a way in which you're building a wedge into the old system. And I think what I heard from you is that you can go the sort of like revolution angle, or you can go the enablement on top of the existing system angle. And I think that Open Collective, it sounds like, is maybe kind of a bridge between the two. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I think that Open Collective is like, it's definitely sitting in, we're going to build on top of the existing system and abstract it as much as we can. And then DAOs are very much in this is an alternative and we don't even talk to the existing system, right? And so I think we need to come closer together in building those bridges, because I think that a lot of that's how we're going to pull people over, right? That's how we're going to bring folks to a more decentralized kind of future.
Do you have any sort of alpha or insights on how these non-hierarchical communities have worked and have governed themselves on open collective? I know that y'all are very transparent about spending, which is something that the old fiat system doesn't have, but blockchain systems have. I know that you've got an ethos of democratic and distributed network governance at Open Collective. Is there anything you've observed on Open Collective that's alpha for people who are running DAOs at all?
Yeah, I think, and this is related to like the second comment I wanted to make about DAOs, that is like, whether it's on DAOs or Open Collective or like traditional system, the problems are human and they're the same, right? Participation is a problem for everyone. DAOs, non-DAOs, democracy, collective, whatever you call it, right? Because it has to do with as human beings, our challenges, right, to participating and to engaging. So I think that we need to be super aware that I think the challenges are more cultural than they are technical, right? In many, many spaces. And a lot of folks don't end up participating, right? So even if you have like super liquid democracy, quadratic voting kind of setups, and you're like, but you can vote on this, like more often than not, folks won't vote, right? And there's a million reasons why, and we can get into all of this, but at the end of the day, you'll have, and it happens if you go to any freaking like assembly, town hall assembly, you're going to have the same problem, right? You're going to have the same voices that are the loudest, that are the ones with time, that are the ones who have the opportunity to kind of be there and pester and get involved and vote, right? And we see that happening in collectives, we see that happening in DAOs, we see that happening in politics, right? So I think it has to do with understanding drivers of participation. And I know that DAO has been like, playing or experimenting, which I think is phenomenal, right? Experimenting with like earn to play, earn to participate kind of, models, which I think must be experimented with, but we still don't know the result of that, right? We still don't know like the long-term consequences for governance or for accountability or for concentration of power, right? So I think that my one kind of, thing that I would say for folks involved in governance in DAOs, like really kind of, I would approach the problem not as a design problem, but as very much as a cultural and human problem. And then use design to, optimize for that. But if you think it's only design, we're just gonna, do this fancy quadratic voting, which again, I love, okay? But what I'm saying is like, make sure that you are not forgetting that the folks you are, that your units are human. They're not addresses. Right?
Amazing. Yeah. I think that one of the things I sort of heard there is that you've got the mechanisms and you've got the governance, but don't sleep on culture. And if culture and the humanity gets away from you, then no mechanism is going to save. What is how have you tried to design the culture around Open Collective? I mean, I've seen some of it from the outside. I've been to Sustain Web3, educating people about the problem, giving them the tools to solve it themselves. But I guess I want to keep pulling that thread. Where's the cultural alpha? What should DAO leaders be doing with their culture?
Yeah, totally. So, for example, in Open Collective Foundation, that now we're working very strongly in the solidarity economy, we have a solidarity economy school. We have a school, right? And we've created this to, I don't know, to involve folks in thinking about solidarity economy, in thinking about like network building. So we have courses, we have a lot of grassroots work that we're doing there. We are connecting with organizations in the space. It's almost like old school organizing, but like using tech, using kind of all of these like new thinking around it. But yeah, like the school is key. We hold a lot of calls with people all the time. We're now working on a different project to do conflict management and conflict resolution training and positive feedback training and circular leadership training. Right? I think we acknowledge that we're humans. Essentially, I think that's the key to this. And as humans, we need to learn. And a lot of folks, back when I was doing politics, a lot of with the Net Party and Democracy OS and all of that jazz, like a lot of people in Buenos Aires who would, we would approach with this, look, we built this shiny software. You're now going to be able to participate and vote on legislations. And they were like, well, I'm going to vote, but it's going to be my responsibility. Oh no, like I'm not prepared. And I guess in some like subconscious level that, I understand why. There's this fable by Aesop, right, that says of this fox that tries to get the grapes on sour grapes, right? And jumps and tries to get the grapes and fails and jumps again and fails. And then walks away saying like, oh, they're like, they're sour anyway. And the fox internalizes this notion that grapes are sour and never tries again. Even when it grows up, it doesn't try anymore. And we do the same. Like we've internalized this notion that we don't know, we can't participate, we're not ready. Like we should leave that in the hands of professional politicians. And because that's what we've been told, that's what the system that we have is designed for, right? It's designed for excluding everyone except professional citizens that we call representatives. And so the system works great, right? It's so great that we've internalized that we can't really vote. We can only vote for someone to decide, but we can't decide. And so we need to break like a lot of baggage that we as humanity are carrying in terms of our ability to participate. We need to experiment how to live through participating. And, we were talking just before we started about exit to community and this idea that, we want to do with open collectives kind of future, like the platform's future. And my main kind of focus or concern beyond kind of the transaction has to do with how on earth do we train our community to own and manage something like Open Collective, right? Because I don't want to turn around in 2 years and say like, oh, okay, folks, this is yours. Bye, have fun, right? But never train them on how to manage something like a community-owned piece of infrastructure. And so that's kind of what referendums do. Referendums in politics are kind of this really blunt instrument of democracy that politicians can decide on something and they're like, oh, we're just going to throw it to the people. They can decide. And it's like, should we stay or should we go? Vote, right? And that's not how it works. We've never trained people into deciding. You've never had like build up to that. And so for me, the core of everything that we're doing is how do we get communities up to speed with governing and being kind of themselves the ultimately decision makers. We've never done that. We've never trained communities to be decision makers like that, or at least not in our space. And so that's what we want to do.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that the alpha that I get from that is that it's not a technology problem, which depresses me as a software engineer, but it sounds like it's a cultural problem. And that excites me as a citizen. So Aesop's fable, people unlearning before they learn. And then basically, I want to pull on the thread of your exit to community because I think that maybe there might be some parallels between Gitcoin grants becoming a DAO and Open Collective's exit to community. How do you imbue the community with context in order to be able to steward your baby, Open Collective? I mean, I can say from Gitcoin's perspective, I've just been like rage writing blog posts with all of my context to put it out on paper and trying to educate people as much as I can about the 5 years of context that I have. But then there's governance. I'm asking too many questions at once, but can you tell us about your exit to community? What's the goal behind that? How are you empowering the community to steward Open Collective in the future?
Yeah. So exit to community. So Open Collective Inc. is a privately owned company that has venture capital. And so we have a cap table. We are in a quite a unique position because Xavier, my co-founder, when we raised like a $2 million round, that was like the biggest round that we've ever, and the last round that we've raised 4 years ago. When we did that, he was adamant that there weren't going to be any board seats, any control from investors on the company. He had a very bad experience when he had Storyfy and he had to sell Storyfy in the past. And so we ended up in this like quite unique position for your traditional startup of, US startup, where we've gave away 30% of the company to investors. The rest is like employees and founders. Investors don't have board seats, so they can't really, force us to give dividends or anything. We have investors that are really long-term investors. I'm so proud of the investors that we have. When we raised, we said like we have 10-year vesting on our company, right? Vesting is like the length of time that passes before you can actually fully execute on your options, right? You accrue your stock in time. Normally, the vesting period for any startup is 4 years. We said like ours is 10. And the reason we did is like we know that Open Collective is not going to happen overnight. And so if you want to join in, we love you, but we're here for the long haul. So, brace yourselves. And they accepted those terms. They were, and they've been nothing but supportive. And so we are in this kind of super unique position where we can have a lot of control on the future of the company. We're not forced to grow like crazy to raise our valuation. We are not forced to, do 100x returns or anything like that. Like it's not going to happen, and they know it. And so thinking about the future of Open Collective, and I said this before, but I really want to make myself redundant here because I think that a successful mission survives its funders, right? It's a mission that doesn't matter who I am or where I am in the world, or my team is, or the whole Open Collective family is, the mission survives, right? And so in thinking about that, like what are our options for a startup like ours? We can sell, right? Or we can go public, or, I don't know, we keep going forever and ever. But our investors eventually are going to want something in return. And so none of those options are an option for us. We don't want to sell because selling doesn't guarantee that you can protect your mission. And we're definitely not in a path of hypergrowth, go public, IPO. That's not the path that we're in. And that's not the one. I do not believe in hypergrowth. I think it's bad for the world, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the communities. Anyway, and so thinking about that, like exit to community seems like the right option for us. Now, what does it mean, exit to community in this context? It means that we want to transfer ownership of all the Open Collective shares to the community. Now, the Open Collective community is like 7,000 collectives, 60,000 donors, 400 nonprofits, right? And I don't know how many admins of collectives, right? So what is, and that spans around the world, literally across the globe. So how is first, like, what is our community? How are they gonna like get together and manage this? What are our options? What's the kind of corporate structure option that we have? And so we are working through different options. A DAO is definitely like an option on the table that would solve for certain problems. Like it's easy for us to distribute tokens to the communities. It has an embedded kind of governance aspect to it. Potentially it could provide the liquidity for the transaction to happen, right? Potentially it could protect the mission. It's unclear, but it has also a lot of like cons, right? Half of our community would freak out if we did a DAO because they're, it's like it's a very contested issue, to say the least. Anyway, so different problems there. The cognitive leap. How do we actually get people like using the tokens and voting? Right? We're talking about really large number of people around the world. Not all of them are tech savvy, right? So that's one option. Another option is to do a purpose trust, right? Where we create a trust and then the shares start moving from the current owners to the trust. And then that trust has a governance structure that allows the company to keep functioning, developers to keep, being hired and maintained, and all of that jazz. Now, the transaction aspect of the exit to community to a trust is not what worries me the most. I think, yes, we have to get the liquidity. We need to talk to investors, which we're already talking to them. And they're super supportive. We have to find a shared revenue mechanism that works. But the problem is like the governance of this, right? How do you design the governance of a thing like this by 60,000 people around the world? It's really difficult that is the problem. So we're going to flip what you did, right? We're going to flip like that process. We are doing the blog posts and the training and the podcast and the town halls and the whole thing with the community now, and then the transaction will happen in about 18 months, 2 years, right? And because I don't want to get there and then have to train our community on how to manage this. I think that conversation needs to happen now. So now what we're working on is, again, with the school, with a podcast that we're launching, writing about it, doing, using every tool available to get ideas and design. And the design process of the trust is going to be like what's going to take the longest, right? And then we're just going to do it. So I have more questions than answers at this stage, to be honest. I don't even know if the trust is what it's going to look like. It might be like a global co-op. It might be a combination of things, it might be a trust and a DAO for governance, for all I know, it's unclear. We know that like the metrics that we're optimizing by is like, is this going to protect our mission in the long term? And that is like, it's a bit more nuanced than what it sounds, because right now, and it goes back to what we were talking at the beginning, right now the solution that we have is a platform plus fiscal hosts plus nonprofits that hold the money for the collectives. That has an inherent power dynamics into it that's quite strong, right? You're a community, you don't control your funds. It's like not your keys, not your money. It's like the same thing here, right? Like you depend on your fiscal host that controls your money. You need that because you need their fiscal status. Like the flip side is that they're taking all the risk for your activities, right? So like it works because it's like, otherwise it's like mutual assured destruction, but also it's like a cooperation system that works really well. But that works today. Maybe tomorrow it's different. Maybe tomorrow we find a better way for communities to be sustainable. And I can't create a vehicle for the future that kind of cements this power dynamic, right? Because if I need to be, so the goal here is for collectives to be sustainable, not to be sustainable through fiscal hosts. So what we are like optimizing for is this, protecting the mission, with the mission being we want communities to be sustainable. Right. So that's kind of the number one thing. Then obviously we want like future proofing, something that can be sustained in time, something that can provide the liquidity for the transaction, and something that can accommodate like a multi-stakeholder, like a global multi-stakeholder system. Kevin, I don't know what that looks like. We are like playing around with all of these. We have time. And I think we're going to come up with something that my win is like we make this happen, and in doing so we build like some sort of blueprint roadmap for other companies like Open Collective to use.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what strikes me, is that you're truly just a pioneer. I mean, not only 6 years ago starting Open Collective and focusing on open source sustainability, but working on co-ops and mutual aid in I think like a way that front ran DAOs, and now you're kind of front running the creation of DAOs, the exit of community, and coming up with a playbook for others who would want to exit to community. So I'll be rooting you on.
Refi summer has arrived, and Celo is here for it. Celo is the layer 1 blockchain for the regenerative finance movement. It's fast, planet positive, and built for the real world. Celo has committed towards producing a sustainable future from the very beginning, and is the world's first carbon-negative, EVM-compatible layer 1 blockchain. Celo has become much more than a technology, a currency, a community, or even just a layer 1. Celo is a movement to create conditions of prosperity for everyone. You can soon engage with all of this via green asset Uniswap pools on Celo, benefiting reforestation and other regenerative products through the Toucan protocol, Moss, and more. Refi is also about the health of communities, and Resource Network is creating bankless infrastructure for circular trade and mutual credit networks to benefit small businesses and local economies, all on Celo. Follow along on Twitter to learn more about how Celo is accelerating Refi Summer for a positive impact on people, communities, and the planet. If you're attending ECC, visit the Celo Saloon to learn about what's happening on the front lines of Refi from industry experts.
So, you've got some money, but how are you gonna use it? You want to spend.
You, me, shopping, now, bro.
When you know you should be saving.
You'll never buy a house at this rate.
But what if you could spend and save at the same time? For the enlightened kind, with inquiring minds, a new world awaits. Set yourself free with completely flexible, self-repaying loan technology. Supported on desktop and mobile, seize the power of Alchemix, allowing you to spend and save at the same time. Leverage your wealth without risk of liquidation. Take out a loan that repays itself. By using yield from your deposit to pay off your balance, your only debt is time. What was once inconceivable is now within your grasp.
You're winning some.
I wish that the DAO space wasn't such a hot topic and that DAOs were more of an option for you. Is there anything that the regen movement in Web3 can do to make DAOs a more attractive option, to pay down some of the concerns about hypercapitalism and Ponzi schemes and all the bad narratives about Web3?
Yeah, I think that, look, I quote your work a lot because I think that the whole green pill and solar panels and regions kind of work, I think that's what we need to do more of, right? And when I talk to the Open Collective kind of team and folks, I'm like, this is what, I want to do a game. I want to do a board game. I want to do a video game. I want to do art. We need music. We need, and I see what you're doing with this. And I'm like, this is the right, path, because the ethos is important, the culture is important, the way it sounds, the way it looks, it's all about building this storytelling. So I think that doing more of this that you are already doing, I think it's friendly, it's appealing, it's cultural, it's fun, it's the artwork, the everything, right? I think that storytelling and that kind of branding and cultural output is very, very important, because, on the other hand, you have, and I don't want to start a fight here, right? But you have the bros eating meat in the Lambos. And I know this is a stereotype, me, yeah. I've been in crypto for way back when, but that aesthetic is very, very strong, right? And that aesthetic is very off-putting,
right?
Super. And it's very, again, we are forgetting about the human aspect of it, right? Even if it's the best idea with the best if it's canned in we're eating beef in Lamborghinis and,
right.
If you're not self-sufficient then with your guns and your thing, then you are, have fun staying poor. That, dude, seriously, who do you want to, not everyone. And so I think that I see the work that you are doing with solar panels and green pill and all that as oh my God, finally someone is understanding that you can use the same tech, the same kind of concepts, the same self-sovereignty, individual sovereignty, framework and tools that are so important, but we just package them differently, right?
Right.
And so I think that, and then explaining, I don't know, we're going to have to do this till the end of time, so explaining about proof of stake and how that's different.
Right.
the environment and all of that. And then I don't know, maybe this is just me, but do not laugh at poor people. I think that would be
Of
like
course.
the first, the first thing that, I would say. That's kind of a big one, if you want to
Yeah.
build bridges.
Yeah, totally. I think that, we've got it's the internet of money. And I think that there's been a part of the Web3 ecosystem that is fetishizes wealth. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that this technology could really help. So keeping a finger on the pulse of
100%.
that.
If you see what's happening with UBI and proof of humanity, and look, I see the other day Santi,
Yeah.
like full disclosure, Santi City, he's my husband. He's like behind
Mhm.
UBI, but like I was seeing that Santi put together for the Pope of all people. I'm not gonna get into that. Like this, sorry, it's a bit too much for me to handle. But he put together like a video with all the testimonials of folks in Argentina using, UBI and how it helped them. And I mean, it's like, of course, like how can you say no to that, right? It's like also on the other side of the equation, you also folks need to understand that there's a lot of good being done with this, and it's not all
Right.
greed, and it's not like, and if they don't want to see it, they're also like really blindfolded by their own kind of,
Biases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'll have to say, thank you for saying that. Regenerative crypto is a whole movement. I'm just kind of aggregating a lot of really other great people who are doing great work.
I am a fan of your work.
Yeah,
Definitely.
likewise. Thank you so much. I got a couple more questions for you. I think that we're probably running low on time. I want to dive in on a quote that's on your website and ask you about it. It says that you have a deep belief that we're 21st centuries doing our best to interact with 19th century institutions with information technology from the 15th century, and it's up to us to design the political and economic systems of the internet generation. Can you tell us a little bit about that philosophy?
Yeah, I still believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think that our political institutions and so institutions in general, like democracies, political institutions, economic institutions, they're not created in the void. They respond to a certain society, to a certain technology, to a certain education and access to education that was there when they were created. Right. So if you think about it, like having representative democracy, for example, it's like a brilliant idea when your means of communication is like pen and paper and a horse. Of course, you don't want everyone in the room because they can't physically be in the room, because they can't get to the room, and also because they don't have access to the education they need. That changed dramatically, right? And so we can all be in the room now. We can all have access to the resources we need to make this decision. We can all participate, but we're still being excluded. We're still, forced to be in the recipient end of a monologue instead of being active participants of a dialogue. And that generates a lot of frustration. It generates a lot of noise and a lot of silence in the system. It generates, like, when things go bad, people go out on the street in a very non-constructive way, because that's noise, right? Because that's their only option. But also, most of the times, they're just quiet and they don't want to participate. So kind of apathy is a feature of this system. It's not a bug. Like, that's what this system is intended to do, for everyone to be apathetic and go do their thing in their own private space and leave. The system wants to self-perpetuate, right? And that's why it's exclusive. So I think that we citizens are, now in this situation where society moved forward to a place where we can represent ourselves, but we're still stuck with institutions that were designed in a time where we couldn't represent ourselves. And that is kind of the rift that we are seeing. And it's not going to get better until we design institutions for this society.
Right. And I think going back to maybe one of your earlier points, there's the culture of, oh, wait, I've got to vote now. But, we can build the technology of high resolution democracy and preference expression, but there's also the culture of asserting yourself and asserting a vision and expressing your preferences that I think needs to be built as well. Is that a fair
statement? Yeah. We need to experience participation and we need to learn how to fail.
Right.
We need to do it and fail and learn from it. And failing should be okay. Until we have like real stakes decisions, and we fail at them, we're not going to learn from them, right? So we need to design kind of those spaces where we can fail at governance in a way that is more or less controlled or more or less contained, so we can learn, right? So higher stakes, we are already better trained to do so.
Great. There's this quote that I found when I was doing my research on you. Political action is being able to move from agitation to construction. Is that the process of building digital democracy is starting with agitation?
I mean, I think that agitation has more to do, and this comes from where I started my political activism way back when. It was like the Green Revolution in Iran, Arab Spring, all the student movements in Argentina, Chile in 2011, 2012. And we were like furiously on the streets thinking that social media was gonna, open up democracy for everyone because we could tweet. And I think that we missed a lot of things there, but we're trying to do was like be against something. We're against this system,
right.
Occupy Wall Street, we're against the 1%. Like we were very much like defining ourselves against what we were seeing. And so the result was that we undermined a lot of institutions, but we didn't build anything instead, right? So that's what I meant about moving from agitation to construction. We need to not only be against something, we need to know what we want to build instead. And until we figure that out, that's the hardest part, like the system that is in place, the status quo, is going to remain the status quo because we're utterly unable to construct anything else, right?
Yeah, that's one of my worries about social media and even in the DAO space is that there's so much just tribalism and misinformation and deconstruction and sometimes being able to produce and construct. For me, it viscerally feels better. And I think what I'm sort of learning from you is that construction is actually a part of creating a new system. The whole Bucky Fuller quote about how you don't tear down an old system, you create a new system that makes the old system obsolete, and you can't do that without construction. So building tools that are constructive instead of destructive, I think is what I take out of that.
Yeah, 100%. And they're tough conversations, right? Which is part of the problem. It's a lot easier to go protest against something. It's a lot more glamorous to protest against something and to sit down in a freaking room and figure out what you want, right? It's very difficult because then deciding what you want to build implies that not everyone gets what they want, and so that is we don't know how to do that well. We need to learn.
Oh man, it's such a frontier.
It is. But if we don't do it, Kevin, who's going to do it, right? We need to step up and build these things.
That's true. Yeah, if you're looking around for someone to build the new system, it might be you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to? I mean, you just have such this breadth. I don't even know what to ask you next. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to say or talk about?
No, I think we touched upon like all the things that we can. There are obviously a lot more topics, but I'm also conscious of time. So I don't know. I think like maybe for the future, really kind of. That question about like how can the Web3, the regions kind of space help close the gap and mend some bridges. I think that's an important one, and that's one where I think you and me are quite positioned to start like maybe like a movement to connect. So I think that for me is attractive because I do believe that like DAOs are an incredible tool to collaborate at a scale that can only be done otherwise in like the context of a firm or a nation state, right? And so DAOs are like the tool that networks can use to collaborate at a scale that is unprecedented. And so I truly believe in that, and I think that there's so much that can be used with that. I think that we need to kind of build bridges backwards, and maybe that's something that we can start thinking about how to do.
Amazing. Well, I think it starts with doing this podcast together, which I'm super thankful that we're going to have another collaboration, and looking forward to building this movement with you. Pia, where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at Pia Mancini without
Okay.
H, so Mancini. And otherwise, opencollective.com, but mostly on Twitter. Shoot me a message there. My DMs are open. I'm happy to chat and collaborate.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.